$250 now, $500 bid now, $250 now, $500 now, $750 bid now, $1,000 now, $1,250 now, $250. And welcome to another edition of the Mike McGavel Jones Show, live from Lincoln Center in Dallas, Texas, the heart of America. We're glad to have you on. We've got some interesting things to talk about today. We're going to be talking about benefits and fundraising auctions and how they affect your community, how they work, some differences between professionals and volunteers, who some of our clientele would be, and a little bit about United Classic Auctioneers here in Dallas, our auction brand for our benefits and fundraisers. Good morning, Zach.
Mr. Jones, thanks for having me back.
Thank you.
So I wanted to ask, and this is going to sound pointed, I don't mean it to, but I think in the world of online entertainment, something that maybe tends to lean people to tune out on occasion is the idea of talking around fundraising and, charity. So what are we going to do to keep this interesting? And I think a big way to do that is auctioning, because you're right. Auctioning is one of those things that you think about and you think, well, you're selling something, but it's also for fundraisers.
Yes, and it is probably becoming one of the top. It's certainly the newest breed of auctioneer, the newest hot way to make a living in the auction business.
Yeah.
I think it's probably the most noticed. Because typically fundraising auctioneers or auctions in general are high profile. Mm-hmm. A lot of times they are based around celebrity, based around major charitable philanthropic groups. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people don't even realize how big this segment has become. I really don't. It is probably one of the most trained areas by our National Auctioneers Association. We have a specific designation for it.
Wow.
And so we're going to talk about why a group, and when I say a group, let's think about this. Everyone has something that they have passion for, whether it's children's hospitals or their church or the Parent-Teacher Association, where their kids go to school. It could be any number of reasons that a person is put in a position where they need to raise money for a designated charity or 501c3. So I think that's the compelling piece of this, is learning more about how they can benefit their community through an auction or the auction process or a benefit or fundraising sale.
So I think a fine place to start here, being the person who doesn't know a lot about this, is in the public perception. Because you're right. When I think of auctions, I think of, people selling fine art or real estate like yourself. I don't often think of fundraisers, but they're a very real thing. I've been to plenty of silent fundraiser auctions.
Mm-hmm. Well, of course, Dallas, Fort Worth, Los Angeles, Chicago, New York, Miami, Houston, these are all kind of meccas for fundraising because the population is so large. But you would be surprised in small and medium markets, whether it's Wichita, Kansas, or Kansas City, Albuquerque, all of these places. One of the biggest fundraising areas, which surprised me, is down around Naples, Florida. It's because so many people retire down there, they're still passionate about certain things. And there's a lot of money in South Florida and southwestern Florida. And so, we go to Florida and do events, and I've gone to Broward County near Fort Lauderdale and conducted auctions there. And so there is, it's not one size fits all. Mm-hmm. And I think varying degrees of specialization or professionalism or style, wherever you are, you're going to have to fit whatever your demographic is. So if you're in Los Angeles, you definitely got a different demographic than in Albuquerque. Okay, they're going to be a lot more laid back in certain communities than they are going to be, say, in a gala or a gala situation versus a weekend dog show or something like that. So
this might seem like a layup question, but why auction for fundraisers? Why not just start, a a funds drive or something, or have some kind of day where volunteers can come out. What does auctioning bring to fundraising?
Every organization has events. Whether it's the Heart Association and their walk, like what we just had over the weekend, last week in Dallas, where they have a big walk. It's like the nation's largest walk, or the Coleman Walk. All these different Ks.
Oh, sure. All the Ks.
Those are big.
Yeah.
Those are big. And then, of course, and you know, because the internet is constantly sending me something, asking me to donate.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it's easier to get people to donate an item than it is to get them to give cash. People like to hold on to their cash. Now, with a 501c3, they will take that donation. If it's an individual check that they're writing, they can get the write-off. But not everybody needs a write-off.
Right.
Some people just need, but they may own a second home. They may have a vacation home. They may have a timeshare that they can donate for a weekend. It doesn't hurt. Doesn't feel like it hurts.
Right.
Maybe they own a business where they own a limo business, or something where they can contribute, but it's not a cash offering. And I think that's one thing. The second thing is, with an auction, you get more people involved. Plus you've created a fun live event.
Right.
And that's the big deal. It's a sense of community where you can come together on a given day and a given night. Whether it's to adopt dogs and cats, or whether it's to support the zoo, and these are all things that I've done over the years, and we'll do about 40 events a year of varying degrees. Maybe you have a passion for the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, or Ducks Unlimited, or it's a specific group, or National Rifle Association, or maybe UT Southwestern, cancer research, the Children's Hospital here in Dallas. I work with the American Cancer Society a lot, and the Heart Association. So these are different groups. But there's just ways you can contribute that are easier than just writing a check.
Sure.
People get kind of tired of just writing checks. And in fact, I'll give you an example. So the National Auctioneers Association Foundation, which I am the chairman of right now, and have been on that board for probably close to 15 years. And so we had a foundation, but it was limited in scope because sometimes I think auctioneers have a harder time raising money for their association than for any association. I can raise money for your association, but when it comes to auctioneers trying to raise money within their own association, we always seem to have a problem with that. Nobody wanted to ask anybody for anything. So we would come up with something we could do. One year we sold a calendar. Okay. A calendar has 12 months, which is fine. So and it was a big calendar. So larger auction companies could buy the top half of the calendar you're gonna see their company name or logo or pictures of their company.
Yeah.
And they were like $5,000 a page. And we did that, and I participated. And then you could sell squares on the calendar. So if your birthday was March 17th.
Oh, wow.
You could sell that, we would sell that for $50, and or you had a family member, or you had 10 family members, and you wanted to put all their birthdays on, or anniversaries. It really was a good fundraiser, for us. But you don't want to do that every year. That kind of burns, anything burns out after a while. So you got to renew yourself, reinvent yourself. So then with the advent of the online auction, well, then we got into doing an online auction. And so then the various auctioneers across the United States would donate something cool for the online auction. And it could be, I remember one year we had tickets to Lambeau Field, to the Green Bay Packers, and it came with an autographed football and a dinner experience and stuff like that. And all you had to do was get there. If you got there, then you were going to go to Lambeau Field. I donated a weekend of the Dallas Cowboys And you had a choice. You could go Cowboys, Mavericks, or Rangers, whatever your thing was. We would buy it. We would have tickets for you, and we'd have good tickets.
Yeah.
These were not cheap tickets. And then we did that one year and probably raised $20,000, $30,000, and then I was chairman one year of the deal. And fortunately for me, a gentleman named Randy Wells from out in Oregon, or Idaho. Randy had bought up a bunch of domains, and they were all auction-related domains, and they related to states. Well, here you've got all these auctioneers from all over the United States, and naturally, if you could buy IdahoAuctions.com,
it's pretty good.
That was pretty good.
Yeah.
So Randy decides, you know what, I'm going to donate all these domains, and he donated I don't know how many, 20, 30 domains or something. But anyway, that was our biggest fundraiser to date. So I was fortunate to be the chair at that time, and we ended up raising like $85,000 that year. So that was a great fundraiser, which is great, but we didn't have domains the next year.
Yeah.
And people kind of got burned out on the online auction for a while. Mm-hmm. So then we thought, okay, let's go with let's try something new. So during our national conference and show, let's do a paddle raise. And basically it's paddle raise. And a paddle raise is when you have people get up and they kind of testify to the crowd what the National Auctioneers Association has done for them. Which, I would be a good witness for that.
Sure.
So, and I've done that, and some others have. So for the last 5 years, we'll kick off our one of our mornings. I can't remember if it's the first day, the second, or third. But anyway, in the first 2 or 3 days, we'll have some influential auctioneers get up and talk about the benefits to being a member. And our goal is to raise money for scholarships and give people the opportunity for education. That's what we do. The foundation board kind of oversees funds, provides funding for special projects and education for the National Auctioneers Association. That's what we do. And so, because we have a lot of different educational opportunities. We have the Certified Auctioneers Institute, which is a 3-year school. And if we can help underwrite 2 or 3 people for that, their hotel and the educational class, maybe year 1. Maybe if we can get you there for year 1 for free, then you can find the money to show up year 2 and 3.
An investment, sure.
It's an investment in them. It's an investment in our future. And so then an auctioneer will get up and bring up certain levels, whether it's, say, $5,000. So you're basically asking people to pledge $5,000 towards this goal. And so people have a bidder number. They hold their hand up. There's $5,000. Bill Johnson over here, number 2362. Thank you very much. Here's Amy Johnson. Amy Johnson over here. That's 5,000. We have 5,000 over here. So you're just going through.
Yeah.
People that have the means can hold up their card, and we do that. Then we drop down to, say, the $2,500 level, then the $1,000 level, maybe the $750 or $500, $250, and then we also have a campaign where you can give $100 a month, or in this particular case, it was called the 12 by 12. I think that's what it was. But anyway, you could give so much a month. It came out, it was a pretty nice donation. It's not going to break anybody.
Well, every little bit helps, right? That's what it's all about.
Yeah. And so most of us who give on these various levels will still do the 12 by 12 campaign, or whatever that particular one. A friend of mine from Florida actually came up with that. Benny Fisher from down in Fort Lauderdale area. Yeah. His son is actually the mayor down there, just north of there. And but anyway, Benny's an old member, been with the NAA for many years, and he came up with that campaign. It's been a great campaign, and we've continued to do it for about 5 years. And as a legacy, I'll do a shout out to the Fisher family because, Benny is a good friend, and he actually inducted me into the Auctioneer Hall of Fame in 2012.
Wow!
But their history is great. They actually were the ones that sold the Versace mansion.
Oh, wow!
Yeah, for over $40 million, I believe it was, and they have hosted us down in that area, and just great people. just great people. And that's the thing about the associations that I'm a member of. It's the people.
Yeah.
And so that's how we raised money with the foundation. We did it again in July. We just did it, and we raised, I think, over $100,000. I think it was around $110,000. Well, where in the world can you raise $110,000 and not have to just wear it out over 6 months to a year, or have to call everybody?
Yeah.
To say, would you? You know, it's kind of like it's a lot like church. It's a lot like a church asking for tithes, and so. I think that's one of the huge benefits to an auction process. So the paddle raise is just a component of a live auction. So like here in the ones that I conduct, whether it's for American Cancer or whatever, especially the private schools, and I've done all the private schools pretty much in Dallas at one time or another, in the Catholic churches, in the diocese. You know, you'll have a live auction of anywhere from 5 to 15 items, and then you'll do a paddle raise either before, during, or after. And most of these groups count on these funds in order to reach their goals, and they'll always have a goal. They'll say, well, Mike, our goal is $50,000 this year, or our goal is $100,000. You know, it's all over the map. And so anyway, that's what a live auction does. It gives groups that aren't normally going to have a way to raise money a special event. And a lot of your fall festivals, you know, especially with your churches, that's a big deal. You know, your spring, and you know, spring or fall. And like I used to do a lot of Catholic church fundraisers, and that would always normally be in the fall, around football season, and it might go on all night long. I mean, you know, some of these churches, they might start the auction. They'll have a fall festival during the day, and then it'll be just a fest. Let's call it a fest.
Sure. And
it'll run all night long, and there's just a lot of components to that. And but it's a fun way to make money and bring it in. Now, a few years ago, when Nebraska Furniture Mart came to the Colony, which is north of Dallas, about 30 miles.
I'm familiar.
Yep. They're the world's largest furniture store. I was actually familiar with Nebraska because they had one in Kansas City, and when I bought my home in Kansas City, I purchased all the furniture that was in my home from Nebraska.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what Nebraska Furniture Mart was until I went there, and then I'm like, holy cow. And so it's kind of a one-stop shop.
Yes.
And that's by design, obviously. But when they opened the store here in Dallas, they were pretty smart because it is connected to Warren Buffett and his company. I got a call from a group that I do a regular fundraiser for, and she says, we have been asked if we'd like a donation from Nebraska Furniture Mart. They agreed, and so what they would do is they have a lot of events leading up to the actual grand opening of the store.
Yeah.
So kind of like they'll do some special offerings and invitation only stuff, and then they'll actually open the doors to the public. Well, one of the deals was they'd take the third floor, which is kind of like the outlet area, and they just take all the furniture out. They clear the building, and they put down, I think it was like 1,500 to 2,000 chairs. And then Mr. Buffett comes in from Omaha, and so it's a night with Warren Buffett.
That's
pretty much
a sight. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So you had some seats that were either $500, I think it was $1,000, and for $1,000 you could do the meet and greet and take a photograph with and all that, and then the rest of the seats were like $100 to $150 a piece. I can't remember the exact number. But the idea was that he would do a Q&A for 45 minutes, and then we would do an auction, and then the money would go to a local 501c3. In this case, it was a cancer research fund, and I was selected as the auctioneer and was able to work with him, and that was a great auction. It was an event that the people that were there will not soon forget. And it had a who's who in the crowd.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, people like Kathy Ireland, that a lot of the people would remember as the model, and she also she has her own line of furniture and lamps and things of that nature.
Kathy Ireland,
and she was in a movie that was filmed at North Texas, where you went to college.
Oh,
and
wow.
I went to college. can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. You can Google it. But Kathy Ireland was in that movie. I think she played a kicker in the movie. But it was filmed up in Denton, about 30 minutes from here. But Kathy Ireland was a famous Sports Illustrated model. And then Roger Staubach was there and his wife Mary Ann. And it was a very, the room had a buzz.
Yeah.
And so Warren's pretty smart. His people are smart in that when they have one of these events, they own so many companies. He requires all the presidents of his companies to be at the event.
Oh.
So if you're Burlington Northern Santa Fe, which they own, then they have a special historic dining car that sits in Fort Worth. And it's they offer that up at auction, and it'll usually bring $5,000 to $10,000 for you and your guests to be treated to dinner on the dining car. And of course, this is a historic dining car. This is not like last year's model. This is like 100 years or something like that.
Sure,
very big deal. And then they own Acme Brick, so the Acme Brick guy comes and makes some kind of a donated item. And then they own, I believe they own Justin Boots. So,
oh, wow.
So, yeah, they've got like 7 companies that will show up. And so they did. But there were unique items, for example. And here's the thing about fundraising. You can do fun things that just blow people away.
Oh, yeah.
So, for example, there was 100 $1 bills framed up, signed by Warren Buffett.
So, at first, I was going to say, okay, you framed a $1 bill. What are you going to do about that? But then you put Warren Buffett's signature on it. Suddenly,
you put 100 of them in a frame,
and
have him sign it. Well, that's just it's just a feel good. So anyway, and there was many items like that.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing was, he starts his performance by coming out wearing a Western hat, which nobody had ever seen him in a Western hat. In fact, I still haven't seen any photos from that night, but I know they're out there.
Yeah.
So Warren Buffett comes out wearing a Western Stetson or Resist. I think it was a Stetson, and he's carrying a ukulele, and I had a big crew working for me that night as bid spotters and ringmen, and so Warren comes out and he tells the crowd. Of course, I will tell you it was a very his crowd that night was pretty conservative group of people. Okay. But they're all Warren fans. And we had Nancy Lieberman there and some folks like that from the sports world. Anyway, so Warren gets out and he said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to do something tonight that I'm going to play you a song, and you've never heard this song played on a ukulele." And he said, "I'm going to play the national anthem." And Warren Buffett, because he's smarter than most people in the room, and he's in Texas, he decides to play "The Eyes of Texas." So instead of playing the United States national anthem, he played our national anthem, like a country. And so the crowd went wild, and so then he had me auction off the ukulele. And I think it brought, I want to say, $15,000 to $20,000, around $20,000. And then he made the donation and gave the ukulele away to the person that was the high bidder.
Well, sure.
They didn't even have to pay for it. He said, "I'll pay for it."
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. Or he doubled down, something like that. But, here's where Warren Buffett, he does that at every grand opening, and he'll do it, I guess, from now on. But it tells you the power. We raised a lot of money that night, and we only had like 10 items. But those 10 items all averaged anywhere from, $10,000 to $20,000 a piece. And he was smart because, you get 2,000 people in a room, and they all paid anywhere from $1,000 to $150, $200 a piece to be there. We probably raised, I don't know, $500,000 that night.
So I want to ask, because we only have about 5 minutes left, believe it or not. This has been a very quick episode.
It did go by quick.
United.
Yeah.
How are you guys involved in fundraising? Because you said something in there that got me. You said investing in the future, and United's always been good at that.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to seeing trends across auctioneering and seeing that things seem to be moving consistently towards a fundraising basis, how are you guys involved?
Well, we believe in giving back to the community. We did a deal down in New Orleans with a young man named Renell Cotlin. and you can Google his name. He's a African-American young man who, after Katrina, moved back to the lower part of New Orleans, the eastern part, the lower ward, and he didn't have to go back, but he went there. Everybody was gone. I mean, basically, Katrina wiped the area off.
Right.
There was only a few buildings left, and he went back and put in a little mini grocery store, and from scratch. And he was determined to rebuild the lower Fifth Ward, I believe it is.
So it's a noble position.
He's had everybody. Let me tell you something. When you go look at his Facebook page, Zuckerberg's been there. You name it. I mean, famous people go there to support him. And so we did an auction at our national convention a couple of years ago and raised around $75,000 to $100,000 and gave that to him to help rebuild what he's working on.
Yeah.
And so he's got his grocery store. He's put in a coffee shop, kind of a coffee shop for kids where they can go and get free Wi-Fi, where they can do it in a safe environment. And you know, he's just got a giver's heart.
Yeah.
And that's and I like to think that we do too. I think giving is huge. And so I wanted to tell you real quick. So the difference between using a professional auctioneer and a volunteer.
Okay.
And so, because this is huge for those that are paying attention and staying on. A volunteer auctioneer has a giver's heart, okay, but they're not full time. They don't do it every week. They're not formally trained. They typically are distracted with their friends and what's going on. They got other things on their mind other than raising money. They want to raise the money, but they've got other things in their head.
Right.
They're not licensed. They usually only have other volunteers that can assist them in conducting the auction. And the other part of it is when you have a volunteer auctioneer, sometimes the volunteer, they start to own that position, and you can't get rid of them. So if they're good, if they're really good, that's great. But most of them aren't.
Right.
And then now you've got them, and they've been doing it for 5 or 10 years, and nobody's got the heart to tell them they can't do it anymore. I replaced a guy at a private school, and the auction was out at where they filmed South Fork. And the guy had been doing it 18 years. Nobody had the heart to say, hey, it's time to sit down.
Nobody wants to fire the department store Santa.
And they wanted me to come in and be that guy that had to take over for him. So I just made sure we did it very gracefully, and we made sure we gave him a salute and gave him a lot of credit and really kind of dedicated the evening to him. And so there was a transition, and we've been doing it ever since. But we literally tripled or quadrupled what they'd been making all those years. Can you imagine if they'd used a professional all those years, the difference in their auction?
Well, it's like you said at the beginning, it's a live event.
Yeah.
Like, that's what it is.
So, and then when you use a professional, of course, typically they're well-read. They have a stage presence. They know how to use a microphone. They're well-prepared. They're great with people. They're under contract, so they know there's high expectations for them.
Sure.
So they're there to perform. They're performers. They understand strategies. They know how to organize the live auction. They know they have different sets of clothes to wear for the different types of auctions they do. They have a professional staff and team. If the group needs technology, they know who the vendors are to provide those things, whether it's an online component or whatever technology they need. And they understand timing too. I've got an event. I have not two, but I've got multiple events where you have 45 minutes to get this done. Yeah. And you don't have 60 minutes. You have 45 minutes because you've got a major star that's going on. You got Willie Nelson going on at 9 o'clock, and if you're not done at 9 o'clock, now you've got the management mad. Because those guys are under contract too. And so there is an intense amount of pressure in doing those auctions. And I'm used to working with people like that. And, we've got one coming up in October, which we'll talk more about. But, we've got the Zach Brown Band coming into town. We've got Charlie Daniels coming into town. And everything's about timing. And so, I'm looking, just like this podcast, it's all about the timing. And a lot of times I'm asked to be the master of ceremonies for these events. And as you know, I spent time in radio, so I'm not afraid to be behind a microphone or read. And it's just it's having that ability and the confidence to go before a large group of people, because it'll be 2,000 or 3,000 people. The event that we've got coming up, we'll have 25 bid spotters. Now, that's a lot of planes to land. When you've got bids coming in from 25 different bid spotters or ringmen, that's huge.
Yeah.
And so it's not an easy process. You have to be good at what you do. And I like to think the best at what you do. But we really have developed between our school and between the National Auctioneer Association. We have a designation called Benefit Auction Specialist, which I have that designation. And that's a class you take to become, one of the best at your craft for benefits and fundraisers. And I like to think that we are that. So it's United Classic Auctioneers is the brand that I work under. If somebody wants to get a hold of me to conduct a live auction or handle a fundraising event, they can get a hold of me through my email. And I would say go to mjonesauctioneer@gmail.com. That's mjones, Jones, auctioneer@gmail.com. And, of course, we have a website. It's unitedclassicauctioneers.com. We also have Facebook pages for all of our companies, including the United Classic Auctioneers brand. And so it's what we do, and we have a lot of fun doing it. And it's one of the things I don't have to do, Zach. It's something that I love to do.
Yeah.
So and I say this almost every time we get on this thing. If it's fun, it's not work. Mm-hmm. So anytime you can go do something because you want to do it instead of because you have to do it, it's a pleasure. And I love people, love meeting people. Did we show that?
No, I was going to say there's one other thing. I know we're at overtime here, but I don't care. I want to make it happen. There's one other thing. There's a photo at the end of the table. I want you to tell us about that.
Okay. This is a picture that was taken at the National Auctioneers Association convention. The exact year I am not sure, but it's the hotel presidential or the hotel president. I can't remember the exact name, but it was in Kansas City, and I don't even know if it's there now. But if you look at the lectern or the podium there, you'll see a gentleman named Ray Sims. And Ray Sims, there's a song, so people can Google this. There was a song done by a entertainer named Leroy Van Dyke. And Leroy Van Dyke had the number one song, I believe, in 1959. He did a couple of big country songs. And one of the songs was called The Auctioneer. And it was basically a story about his cousin who became an auctioneer, and it's his life story. Well, the guy behind the microphone who's holding up his hand, looks like he's pointing in a direction, that's Ray Sims, and that was his cousin. So he wrote this song and then played it. And Leroy is still traveling today. In fact, I just saw him on television over the weekend in one of those country music deals where you have like 25 or 30 stars and they're singing their old songs.
Yeah.
Well, he just did that. And but anyway, if you look to the right of the lady, that is Harry S. Truman, our president. And Harry S. Truman was the speaker at that National Auctioneers Convention. And they're actually auctioning off a memoir or a book that Harry S. Truman had written. And so when we talk about fundraising and benefit auctions, obviously, and I'm sure the money did not go to the president. I'm sure they donated the money to something.
Yeah.
I don't think we didn't have a foundation at that time, so it didn't go to us. But it's just neat to see a picture from the 50s, and I'm sure it was taken in the 50s, of Harry S. Truman at one of the National Auctioneers conventions, and the fact that they're raising money, and that's Ray Sims, the boy in the story, the auctioneer, the song, and then there's an autographed gavel that Ray gave me, and he was a guest of ours at our United Country offices during the 2009 National Auctioneers Convention in Overland Park. So a little history there for you, but fundraising goes back a long way, Zach.
And it's important. It's not something to scoff at. It's I mean, I don't want to say it's more important than straight auctions, but I mean it's up there, and it's becoming more popular.
It is important, and it affects all of our communities and a lot of our national charities, and here again, St. Jude, Scottish Rite, which is our designated charities, and then the National Auctioneers Foundation and the National Auctioneers Auxiliary. They all are important to us.
Mm. Well, Mr. Jones, per usual, thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate it. Yeah, it was a good time.
Zach, I appreciate the opportunity to be with you again this morning. And every day we're blessed to get up and be able to do something. And I've enjoyed the podcast that we're doing. And on behalf of everyone that's involved in the Mike McGavel Jones Show, we thank you from Dallas, Texas at Lincoln Center, and we'll see you next time.